Hey, thanks for checking out The Solid Verbal. Now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel for college football content all off season long.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildebrand. That guy over there, you know him, you love him. He's always the incomparable Dan Rubenstein in the heart of the Midwest, Chicago, Illinois. Sir.
Yeah.
Welcome back. How's your weekend?
Pretty good weekend. Excited for this show. Got outside a little bit, had some fun. Got a little sweaty doing stuff outside, playing some tennis, working out, the good stuff, Ty, while it's sunny out. But when a player gets in trouble and, it's a big deal thing, right? They do something crazy on the field or crazy off the field, and the media starts asking the coach questions, the AD questions, like, how are you handling this? Is it a season-long suspension? Do you sit out a quarter? And the most common answer, as I'm sure you and everybody listening knows, we're gonna handle this in-house, right? Yeah. We're gonna, this is something that we just sort of take care of in-house, and we're gonna keep it that way.
Right. We're investigating it within. The auditing is looking into it, et cetera.
We're keeping it in the family, and it's one of those things that it's just gonna remain private behind closed doors, and then everybody kind of sees what the punishment is when they miss the next game or the next 3 games or the first quarter of the next game, what have you. I wanted to take that spirit into a fun direction rather than a bummer direction, Ty, because we are doing a Q&A show later in the week, but because I came across this trailer, and I know you're going to get into the housekeeping, but I just wanted to get into it real quick.
Internal affairs.
Whoa.
You like that, right?
Hold on. Do that again. I have something for people watching on video. Go ahead.
Okay.
Do that again.
Internal affairs.
It's pretty good.
You got to take off the glasses like David Caruso style with that.
Yeah, so we have questions, not about the show itself, but we have questions about college football for each other before we open things up to everybody who listens to the show. Obviously, priority given to subscribers to the Patreon at verballers.com in terms of getting those college football questions in. But we each have 3 college football questions and 1 wild card question as well.
That's right. That's correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Play that just one more time. I want to take the sunglasses off. I really enjoy that.
Internal affairs.
You need to take the glasses off and light the match and throw it behind you as the building explodes, but you're unfazed.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds.
It's Richard Gere, Dick Gere. Come on.
That's what
Great
that
looking
sound
trailer
means to me. All right. Well, welcome back. Thank you for setting the tone so aptly as you often do. Dan, as you mentioned, verballers.com is where you can go if you want to sign up for the Patreon and further support the fine work. I hope the fine work that Dan and I have been putting in here over the last month, over the last, 15 years. Verballers.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast. I mean, that's the easiest way to support things. We do 2 public episodes per week. They drop every Tuesday and Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you hit subscribe or follow and leave us a star rating or review. Of course, all of that stuff helps. You can also check us out on YouTube and across all of social media. Dan, we also send out a newsletter every Thursday called Quick Slants. I have not started this week's yet, but I have a general direction that I am interested in going with it. Quickslants.solidverbal.com. Shall we dive in without further ado?
Internal affairs.
Well, internal affairs. Do you want to take the first question, or do you want me to ask you the first question?
Dan, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Some bad news this weekend if you're a Michigan State fan. Mm-hmm. Peyton Thorne, Keon Coleman, they're gone. Out of here. They're going in the transfer portal. You are, of course, people who listen know.
SpartanInsider.com editor. Continue. Yeah.
SpartanSkeptic.com editor.
Yeah.
Dan Rubenstein. What are you blaming most for this? Because this is a big deal. Peyton Thorne was part of that 11-2 team.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman, the leading receiver from a year ago, both in the portal now.
Very good receiver. Arguably the best offensive player on this roster. Yeah.
Very good. Very good receiver. Very good offensive talent for sure. What are you blaming for this? Are you blaming the new rules and, more broadly speaking, just the state of college football that sort of relegates a team like Michigan State? I hate to put them in this category, but sort of relegates them into a farm club, right? We've had that discussion
I disagree
before.
With that evaluation, but continue.
Or is it something internal to the program that we should know about? Is there a Mel Tucker issue that we should discuss? Is it something else altogether? But who do we blame for this? You know, everybody wants to blame when these types of things happen. So who do you blame for Peyton Thorne and Keon Coleman deciding to take their talents elsewhere?
All right. So it's a number of factors, I'm sure. And a lot of it has to do with just fit. That's the easiest one to point to, that for whatever reason, Peyton Thornton didn't feel like he was a fit anymore.
Peyton Thorne.
What did I say?
Peyton Thornton. I don't know who that
Peyton
is.
Thornton. Peyton Thorne didn't, let me separate those words more clearly, feel like he was a fit. Now, does it mean he was passed up by a younger quarterback who was more accurate over the spring and he thought the writing was on the wall, or he was told by coaches, look, this competition's going into fall. This is no longer your job, period. Now, Peyton Thorne, I think, has been a very good Spartan, not necessarily a very good quarterback. It's in a time of transition. He had his moments a couple years ago. He fought through injury last year. He gives his all. In terms of where this offense is, and there were not a number of offensive coaching changes, if I recall correctly, within Michigan State. This is a terrible passing offense. Now, it was a patchwork offensive line because of injuries last year. Certainly, they had Kenneth Walker a couple years ago, a Doak Walker Award winner. But Peyton Thorne leaving most certainly points to the fact that he doesn't have confidence in that it is his job and that it is an offense that will succeed. Some combination thereof. And maybe he's not getting along with the offensive coaching staff, whatever. The more pressing thing and becoming the more common thing is the Keon Coleman thing. We saw it a couple years ago with Jordan Addison and Pitt, that as a receiver, you're only as good as your offense. You're only as good as your quarterback. You're only as good as the passing game that's drawn up for you. And so if Keon Coleman felt as if he was not going to continue growing in the Michigan State offense, that he did not believe in the vision of Mel Tucker and the offensive coaching staff, that he should look elsewhere, it seems that kind of makes sense. That kind of makes sense because it's a position that's so dependent on other people and other brains. So I think it's a bummer for Michigan State. I think it's one of those things that you can point to as saying, like, does Mel Tucker have a stranglehold on this situation in East Lansing? That, they have the season that they have 2 years ago. And we pointed out last offseason, I guess I was a little bit louder. I was like, I don't know if I fully trust, Michigan State having arrived. And so you have the wins over Michigan. You have a lot of positive to take away from it. But Michigan State has so many issues. And we were looking at Mel Tucker as this recruiter, as this guy hitting the portal really hard. And there were bright spots in the second half of last season. They beat a Wisconsin team that's without Paul Chryst. They struggled a little bit too much against teams that, again, if Michigan State had arrived, they shouldn't be struggling with. They fought against Michigan. That score was not necessarily representative of what the game was because they got a lot of stops in the red zone against Michigan and 4 7s into 3s.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in terms of what this means for the portal, what this means for the future of Michigan State and Mel Tucker in the portal, I don't know how you come away from this spring and this offseason saying Michigan State is figuring it out. They're taking the necessary steps. Jay Johnson may be a very smart offensive coordinator, but he might not be the best offensive coordinator for where Michigan State is right now. Some of the numbers, and when you watch the games last year, like what is the plan here? What is the actual vision here for this offense? And it was tough to see a lot during last season. So you would hope, if you're a Michigan State fan, that Peyton Thornton was just flat beat out by, I think it's Kattenhauser is the quarterback, the blue chip quarterback of the future. Noah Kim was the guy who came in as the backup last year. He was flat out beat out. These guys were more accurate, had more of a command of the offense, had more confidence from their teammates. And Peyton Thorne said, well, I got to get out now because I want to finish out my career on the field. That's the hope, if you're a Michigan State fan, that things are getting better and somebody passed by this quarterback who struggled staying on the field in health and accuracy, whatever. But in terms of big picture, with where the Big Ten is right now and where the Big Ten is heading, with adding at the very least 2 quality programs in USC, UCLA, if not very, very good program in USC at its best, it feels like Michigan State has to, at the very least, be a program that does something very, very well. That they did under the best of Mark D'Antonio, right? No. The best of Michigan State in the 2010s was a team that developed great defensive talent on all levels and took care of the ball and were reasonably efficient, if not crazy efficient at times. I think it was 2014 on offense. And so because they're not doing any single thing well right now under Mel Tucker with a background on defense and defensive backs, it worries me that this is not a program that is going to win 9 games anytime soon, which should Michigan State should never be seen as a farm team because they should be able to recruit well enough. They should be able to develop well enough. It's a major program, but I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. Do you?
Well, it's hard to see where it goes. I mean, look, there was a quote back in mid-March from Mel Tucker that he expected there to be a fierce competition at quarterback.
Sure.
And it was, of course, Peyton Thorne, and you mentioned Noah Kim and Canton Hauser. Like, they're guys that they have options to go to if they need to. But Peyton Thorne's been such a big part of this rebuild, if you will, under Mel Tucker, that it's hard to see him go.
Right.
And so even if he's not necessarily the answer long term or even short term, it is sort of a stomach punch because he had a role to play in that 11-2 season. I have to believe Michigan State people, even if they weren't all for Peyton Thorne being the guy moving forward, it still kind of sucks to have somebody who's been a big part of this thing walk out the door. So the other thing that I'd add is if we look back to that 2021 team that won double digits, Mel Tucker gets the contract extension, everybody gets excited about Spartans football. That wasn't a team that was noted for its defense, right? We talked a lot about their offense and the Kenneth Walker thing,
sure.
And there's a lot to be excited about. But defensively, they were very flawed. And there were questions going into last season, i.e., which direction's the defense going to go? Can he fix the defense? And the defense kind of got worse. So I think I'm with you with respect to the light at the end of the tunnel. I still like Mel Tucker a great deal as a coach.
Why? Tell me why. Tell me exactly why.
I think his ability on very short notice to put that thing together at Michigan State the way that he did upon coming over from Colorado was very admirable. I think he took some swings last year in the portal, and they did not amount to the home run of Kenneth Walker.
Sure.
And so now losing guys, look, there are questions that are still there about Mel Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
There are questions about long-term roster construction. But I think if you read the articles, if you listen to what people have to say who have been following Michigan State football for a while, the vibes are good. It's just at some point, the vibes only buy you so much.
I think the vibes were good.
The vibes were good. The vibes were good. And I think now, rightfully so, they've been supplanted by some real questions about where the program's headed next. But I'm not worried about this thing collapsing on itself. I still like Mel Tucker, generally speaking. But these are the types of things that if you're Michigan State, it's much harder to endure guys like this walking out of the program than if you're, say, Alabama or LSU or USC, right? Depth is always going to be a concern.
Sure.
So I'm monitoring the situation. And though I'm not as skeptical about Mel Tucker and Michigan State as I think you are, it does beg the question, like, where's this thing headed? It just has to.
Yeah. I mean, look, by and large, major programs, so Michigan State has been to the playoff. They're yet to score a point, but they've been to the playoff, right? They've won the conference. They've won huge games against huge opponents. You name it, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. They win those types of games with pseudo regularity. Not all the time, but you don't have to be 47 to remember the last time Michigan State beat Ohio State. So my point is, big teams don't lose stars that often, full-on stars. Not starters, but like star power, the players that teams are built around. And so to lose the starting quarterback of the last 2 years and the best receiver at the end of spring practice, look, you can say, somebody tampered, right? There have probably been efforts to get Keon Coleman to a number of schools these past few years. Let's not bury our heads in the sand. There have probably been efforts, and he has said, you know what, I'm a Spartan. I really believe in the vision. And at the end of spring practice, either some kind of offer was too good, or he said, I don't feel like I fit in anymore, and I don't really see this going to a place where I'm really going to shine here.
No.
And so we see when coaches leave, that star power leaves, like Oklahoma a couple of years ago. But to see star power leave does not necessarily speak well of what's happening in East Lansing. Everybody's losing everybody, right?
No.
I'm sure there are players who have left Notre Dame, who have left Oregon, who have left Penn State. You're like, oh, that's a bummer. I really hope that they would have been a contributing piece or a big piece for the 2023 and beyond team. But, man, like, you want somebody to believe internally that this is going in the right direction if you're Mel Tucker or a Michigan State fan. And for whatever reason, and we're not privy to the details, at the end of spring practice, the absolute last moment, right? I think the portal closes. We're recording this on Monday, May 1st. I think the portal closes today. The players don't need to declare where they're going.
Yeah, the portal closed yesterday.
Last night, whatever.
Yeah.
So at the last possible moment, these guys were like, this isn't it for us.
Well, we'll see. There is a market for quarterbacks. There's always a market for wide receivers. So where should we go next? You want to throw one my way?
I would love to.
Give me that sound, though, again. I just need to put these glasses on.
Internal affairs.
Maybe next time I'll put the glasses on as you play the sound.
I would love for that to happen.
Yeah, continue.
I'm going to stick with portal right now. So which team's portal off season has you most intrigued? Let's flip it to the positive, and let's not talk about Michigan State with my concern trolling or whatever I'm doing here, and which has been the biggest bummer. So not like which team is the loser necessarily of the portal season, of all three portal eras of the 2022-2023 offseason, but which you're like, oh man, that makes me sad that the way that, the outs versus the ins hasn't really worked out for this program. So let's first start with the positive. Who you're like, that team, ooh, I can't wait. And that team, Well,
I mean, the one that I'm not going to say, ooh, I can't wait, but the one that I think I'm most intrigued by is Ole Miss.
Okay.
I'm intrigued by the quarterback situation at Ole Miss because they had Jackson Dart a year ago. They brought in Spencer Sanders as a grad transfer in like his 15th season. And in addition, they brought in Walker Howard from LSU.
Yeah.
Those are three notable names in college football. If you've been paying any attention to college football, you know all three of those guys.
Sure. Right?
In some way, shape, or form. You know who they are. You know that they each bring a different skill set and that each have been in the news one way or another. I'm surprised that we did not see like one of them decide, hey, maybe we'll go to Alabama, or hey, maybe we'll go to Florida. There's a clear path for any of those guys to go elsewhere. I suppose there may still be another option at some point to leave and go elsewhere. I'm very curious to see how Lane Kiffin handles it. I think it's pretty obvious if you read the tea leaves that it doesn't convey a whole lot of confidence in Jackson Dart as the guy moving forward. But as for which of the other two, if either he decides to pick come this fall, that to me is very intriguing. And I'm genuinely curious to see which direction he goes.
Okay.
Obviously, Spencer Sanders, much more of a known quantity. Jackson Dart at this point, more of a known quantity. Walker Howard brings with him, I think, a lot of hype from when he was recruited and did the weird 360 pedestal dance with Brian Kelly. That to me is fascinating. So I'd probably answer Ole Miss. As for biggest bummer, the biggest bummer, I think, is Colorado, man.
Okay, let's talk.
It's got to be Colorado. I think it's 13 scholarship players are left from last year's team. Everybody else is transferred out. Many of the guys who have transferred in came from Jackson State. So Dion has essentially gutted two programs in one fell swoop. He gutted all the best players from Jackson State, which sucks if you're a Jackson State fan.
Mm-hmm.
I get that it happens. We all understand why it happens, but it sucks if you're a Jackson State fan. And in doing so, has basically scared everybody away from Colorado. Everybody. Colorado was a bad team last year. There's no doubt about that. He said as much when he spoke to the team in his introductory comments. And I think he said as much during his introductory press conference as well. He's made no bones about the fact that he wasn't enamored with the roster when he got there. Right. And it was a bad team, so I get that much. But surely there must have been some talent on that roster. Surely there must have been more than 13 guys from last season that had a place in the new Dionified, I made that word up, version of the Buffaloes, right? So to me, it just seems very drastic. Very drastic. You know, there are some CEOs who step foot on campus of a new company and they let go of everybody. We've seen that happen recently.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, just seems like a very tall order to go from where Colorado was to now not having any players to taking on some transfers, and they will take on more, but suddenly to put this thing together by fall in some sort of way that's going to make them competitive against TCU, the national runner-up a year ago. TCU is their first game out of the gate.
Sure.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm very bummed out about the way that it may turn around quickly.
Yeah.
And I have a question about Dion that I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I want to talk to you specifically about Dion later in the show.
Yeah. So
it's a bummer for me, man. It's a bummer.
If I may follow up on your answers, which are valid because you thought about it and those are your answers. Do you think if either Walker Howard or Spencer Sanders or Jackson Dart are really good this year, that Ole Miss is any different? Now,
I'm not sure.
Jackson Dart was not a continuation of where Ole Miss has been offensively and at quarterback under Lane Kiffin. There were some struggles going downfield, struggles with consistency, struggles with exact fit at times, it seemed, last year. Now, I appreciate the offensive aggression that Lane Kiffin is known to have. That's sort of his calling card now. Going for it on fourth downs, really pushing tempo, doing great things, finding Quinshon Judkins. It's such a successful thing to do as a head coach.
Sure.
Judkins, excuse me. I just don't feel as if, because Ole Miss, I think, just lost, and who knows how many of them were actual contributors, like 10 or 11 guys at the end of this portal, or since late March, April, in the spring time, which a number of programs have. It's not unique to Ole Miss. I just wonder if we're talking about a Spencer Sanders Ole Miss or a Walker Howard Ole Miss or a Jackson Dart Ole Miss. Is it a different Ole Miss than what we've seen the past couple years? That's where the intrigue maybe leaves my body a little bit.
Yeah, I just I'm curious so much in this portal era about the whole roster construction bit and that weird song and dance, that chess game that coaches have to play. Because, of course, you always want to get better at every position.
Yeah.
Whenever you can. The portal makes that more attainable than ever before. It also makes it very difficult to, play that game of Jenga with your existing depth chart.
Right.
And avoid the whole thing falling down because you decide you want to try and get a little aggressive in the portal. So the fact that they've got 3 guys that could be starters at a lot of schools, I think means that we're going to have a very interesting news cycle once Ole Miss decides who its guy is. But maybe that's just me.
So the Colorado thing highlights something that's not unique to Colorado. You know, what's the term in the NBA? It's player empowerment, right?
Yeah,
that guys can demand trades and get out of bad contracts, whatever. That they're they don't feel as if this team or whatever has done enough to build around them. And the counter to that is it's star empowerment. And I feel like college football is in that place now where you say to yourself, there has never been a better time to be a player, right? Because you can monetize, you can transfer, you can take more control over your career. I think that's true if you are a star or looked at as a potential star. What I think the Deion Sanders at Colorado thing highlights is it's coaching empowerment time for college football, more so than ever. The control that one coach, head coach, that one has over his roster to say, hey, 7 players at the end of spring camp, you're probably not going to play at all here. And so it's probably for the best for your career to find somewhere where you're going to play. To have the ability to tell players that and have their freedom of movement away from the roster that you want to build feels more anti-player than ever. That two things are kind of true at the same time. That players have more opportunity because of that freedom of movement, but because of that freedom of movement, coaches have more opportunity to play around with their rosters. And so Deion's a more extreme case. I don't think Carl Durrell was going to win a lot of games at Colorado, but we saw a couple of players, a few players from the Colorado team 2 years ago from this roster. One of them was just drafted, right? Christian Gonzalez in the first round, went to Oregon, was one of the top cover corners in the country. We saw Mekhi Blackman make a bunch of plays, Brendan Rice, both at USC. There were players on this roster. Now, were they Mel Tucker players? Well, that's a conversation, yes. But I don't, without having watched a ton of Colorado last year, because why would you unless you were a Buffs fan? There's a reason why you win. You go 1-11. Was that what their final record was last year? 1-11?
No.
And if you're Deion Sanders, knowing that even with your name
Hold that thought.
What?
Don't get too deep into this.
Okay, I won't go deep into Colorado, but I'm just saying.
I have a Dion specific question. Maybe we'll do that
Any
next.
coach, basically any coach, 128 out of 131 or whatever coaches can easily be fired after 3 years, especially if they're in the Big Ten or SEC, and there's much more money to play around with buyout-wise than ever. So coaches feel the pressure to immediately transform a roster because this is maybe their only opportunity to do so at a Power 5 place. So they have to take advantage. They have to be quick. They have to be nimble. And they have to redo the roster, right? The previous guy didn't know what he was doing. This is my time to put a stamp on a roster. So I'm going to do it quickly. And that might mean forcing out 27 players or 19 players, or in Deion Sanders' case, 4 generations of players, whatever. And so on a certain level, you're like, these guys want to do everything they can within the rules to get in, and even if it's not technically in the rules, even if they're operating in a number of different shades of gray, to bring in a Florida State transfer, a West Virginia transfer, a Northern Texas transfer, whatever, the window is so short to do so that they want their own guys. Because Deion Sanders trying to win with Carl Durrell guys or Mel Tucker guys who have been a part of a losing culture for the past couple of seasons, especially last year, is just going to reflect poorly on Dion. They're like, why can't you win with a bunch of low-level Mountain West players in the Pac-12?
Right. I get it.
And so on a certain level, it's not, again, not unique to Dion, and we can talk more about it momentarily, but it has become a pretty anti-player time, with the face of it being, it used to be terrible. Now they can transfer freely and make money off of their name, image, and likeness. But that's, I think, a very small percentage of rosters across the country right now.
Give me that sound again. I'm putting the glasses back on now.
Internal affairs.
Boom. You look great, Ty.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to keep them on.
You just have your sunglasses at your work desk at all times?
I had them here. I don't know why I had them here.
I have Jody with an eye. I can put them over my regular glasses.
These bright lights, my man. You know how it is in the podcasting world.
Yeah,
I'll
you
wear
see
my
these?
sunglasses.
You like
for
this look?
question.
How am I looking?
I don't even have you. Let me see here.
Oh, my God. Is that good?
That's very old. It's very
Thank you.
old of you.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You turned a year older on this show.
Thank you.
Okay. Here's my question. Very simple.
Okay.
Does Dion have an actual plan? Your thoughts. Does he have an actual plan, or is he just sort of spouting nonsense? You know, it dawned on me when I watched some of his comments. He did an interview with Pat McAfee when he talked about all these transfers, and Pat asked him a little bit about it, and Dion remained pretty emboldened,
Sure.
pretty triumphant in the face of what seems like incredible roster turnover. And it dawned on me, like, this is how people talk about conspiracy theories. You know, oh, don't worry, it's coming in 2 weeks. Don't worry, you'll wait till you see the plan, the master plan. Then you'll know. Then it'll make sense, right? And then you never see the master plan.
Right.
And there is no master plan. It's just a lot of pomp and circumstance. Dion is not above pomp and circumstance, Dan. Dion made a brand for himself on pomp and circumstance. I am excited to watch his brand of football. I am infinitely curious to see which direction this whole thing goes. But with so many guys walking out the door, I think we can rest easy knowing that it's not going to be like a 12-0 season in 2023. It may never get there at all. But it does beg the broader question of, does this dude actually have a plan, or is he just sort of, you know, creating a lot of dust? Where are you at?
Well, I know he has a plan. He has a vision. I think that's irrefutably
what is
true.
the plan and what is the vision?
Amass as many good players on your roster, big, strong, fast, able players that can win Power 5 games as humanly possible. That's the short-term plan, which is everybody's plan. He just has more attention and a brighter spotlight on him because of his name and how public he prefers to be. Doesn't he? He has Amazon cameras following him at all times. Is that what it is? His Prime reality show, which good for him for locking in that. It's
thematic.
Sense.
The whole Prime thing. I give his marketing folks credit for that, and that's not bad.
And that's fine. All coaches attempt to do that, right? Via social media, via exposure on ESPN or Fox or whatever. Exposure is a major part of this, and Deion Sanders is a natural at drawing attention in a very positive way for recruits family. Now, you and I can step back and be like, it rubs us the wrong way. It doesn't matter. What the vision is right now is fully rebuild a roster and chase out guys who he watched or he believes because of prior results just do not have it in them to win 9, 10, 11, 12 games in the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-8, whatever it looks like, Big 12, wherever the Colorado program is under Deion Sanders. That's the vision right now. It is totally unfair for either one of us to say, I don't know if he has a vision without actually watching his team play football games.
Fair. Totally fair.
It is totally unfair for us to sit back and guess something like that. But what can he do at Colorado? He can bring in good players. Colorado does not have a history of winning in the modern era. They have been the worst team in the Pac-12 era. So it is going to be difficult in a state. I had to look this up. It's the Centennial State, I believe, the state of Colorado. Okay. They do not produce a ton of talent. When they were a Big 12 team way back when, they had the Texas connection because they were playing against Texas schools that, like, yes, you can come to Colorado and get away for college, but still play at home in front of friends and family, whatever. So Colorado has not been crazy successful going into California. They have not been crazy successful going into Texas. You have, LaVisca Chenault. You have the one-off guys like that going into other states and succeeding. So Deion Sanders is going to say, hey, 5-star from Florida, hey, 5-star from wherever, come to Colorado, a school that is not necessarily near talent or doesn't necessarily have a recent history of winning or recruiting crazy well. Come to Colorado based solely on my force of personality and what I sell to you as my vision. I think you can get stars to Colorado. I don't think you can build a crazy talented two deep. I don't think you can build a program that is going to immediately win 10 games every year. It's starting next year. You don't say anything in 2023. That's year one.
Right.
So if you are to believe that you can rebuild a roster quickly, and it is the core tenet of Deion Sanders' existence as a head coach, that you can rebuild a roster immediately and compete to win a ton of games playing the brand of football that you believe in, which, look, he hired high-quality assistant coaches, we believe. Charles Kelly and Sean Lewis, all these guys from a bunch of different schools who've won games in creative, interesting ways. I just don't see Colorado as a place to do that. And so I think his vision is get good coaches, get good players, be aggressive, and try to win a bunch of games. I don't see it happening this year, but yeah, I think he has a plan. I think he definitely has a plan. I'm just not a big believer in what he sees as realistic at Colorado.
Well, and there's also an element of this where you say, well, it's so crazy, maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
Because in this portal era, we have seen a lot of coaches go out there and be very aggressive, right?
Sure.
We talked about Western Kentucky last year, the year prior. They're very aggressive in the portal. They would add pieces left and right. I have not looked, admittedly, to see what they've done this offseason, but I think it stands that you can build a roster pretty quickly. You can upgrade yourself at multiple positions very, very quickly in a way that you couldn't before.
Or you can convince yourself.
Or you can
that
convince
you're
yourself.
Upgrading, right? That you're like, okay, we have this roster at a low-level place. Look at this Clemson transfer, this Minnesota transfer, this Texas transfer. And I think you can bathe in a sort of
the art of the possible, Dan.
Yeah, you can bathe in this like talking yourself into jacuzzi because of where this resume jacuzzi, when in fact a lot of these guys failed, right?
Sure.
Relative to their recruiting ranking, relative to how much they expected to be on the field, relative to how much was expected of them, you're talking about a West Virginia failure, a Texas failure, a Minnesota failure, a Florida State failure.
There's been I think a long-standing joke now among the college football media types out on Twitter about the group of 5 linemen right now on the transfer portal, and everybody wants to talk themselves into the next group of 5 linemen that's out there and could come in and make an impact. To that end, for my previous question, I could have also answered Auburn, because I think Auburn has low-key been very intriguing in the portal. And
I think so.
They've added pieces along the lines specifically that can help them dig themselves out of the hole that they've been in. But that being said, on the Colorado side, this element of it being so crazy that it could work is something that maybe we should talk a little bit more about. If you tried the strategy in the old NCAA video game, you would short out your roster.
Right.
The game did not have the logic in it to know how to add enough people to give you the relevant 2 deep so you could actually play the game. I know because I did this with Arizona State back in the day.
Right.
The exact thing that Dion is doing, just get rid of Get rid of the old furniture. Is that what he said? Get rid of the old furniture and let's bring in
luggage. Yeah,
luggage. Yeah, get rid of it. Let's bring them in. I don't know if this is going to work.
Here's the other issue. Here's the other issue.
Know.
The other issue is you at least have to have a core group that's been there, that understands the way, knows where the bathrooms are in the facility, knows where to, get lunch near campus, whatever. You need that core group to show everybody how it's done, right? There's a reason why you have current players show around recruits, right? You want somebody to project, this is how we do things at Colorado. Welcome in. This is how we go and have a cookout as a defensive line or whatever. If you're dealing with everybody new, and there's no real existing leadership, carryover leadership on the roster, from the strength staff, whatever. And everybody's just sort of, and I think the term mercenaries is like a weird loaded term, but for lack of a better term, like everybody's coming in and finding themselves in the same boat of being the new guy. Like, isn't a core element of succeeding in football culture and everybody's playing for each other else and everybody's sacrificing? Sure, I might not be starting, but, I'm a rotation player and I'm playing my ass off when I do get my 14 snaps or whatever. And so now nobody knows each other and everybody's coming to this place from somewhere else and we're all expecting them to come together and, like, be in the same football family.
Dude, it's the story of America. There it is.
You're comparing Colorado to the melting pot that is America?
The melting pot of college football.
By the way, you look right now like, I think his name is Guy, the drummer from that thing you do. Like, you just look like you took a break.
I need
from
to take
playing
the glasses off. I
Take
can't
the
see.
A-Train.
It's messing with my rods and cones, man.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great look,
now
but
it's
it's
very
tough. Yeah.
Continue. Anyway.
No, that's all I'm saying. That we're just like, okay, you talk about culture. What the hell is the culture at Colorado beyond just like, oh, got to pick up 7 new people at the airport today?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll have to put the America the Beautiful sound back on the board. Played that back in the day for Jameis Winston. All right.
That's true.
Play the sound. Give me that sound again, Dan. I'm done with the sunglasses. It's messing me up.
Which second-year coach, because we just finished our year one debrief, do you think we'll be talking about next March as taking the leap? As in figuring out his team, good, bad, and ugly, diagnosing year one mistakes, and surging forward to a clearly better place. So if we did a year 2 debrief, like, oh, this is the grower.
So are we talking about like Sonny Dykes could be an answer here? Or are we talking about first year guys this year looking back?
No. Sonny Dykes could be an answer, though it would be a very difficult case to make that Sonny Dykes improved upon year 1 and year 2.
So you're talking guys that we just talked about.
Yeah,
basically.
Cristobal, Napier, McGuire, Kelly, like all those guys, Lanning, DeBoer, all of those guys. Who is going to be able to, and some of those guys, Lincoln Riley, some of those guys had a bunch of success in year 1. Yeah. So it'd be really hard to say they really figured it out. Now, if USC has a top 30 national defense this year, Lincoln Riley would be a great answer.
Sure.
So which of those year 1 coaches that we already spoke of do you see as becoming that killer? Diagnosis, murder.
Diagnosis, murder.
Yeah.
Man. I hate to say this, but Brian Kelly.
So they win the West. So you're saying LSU essentially now is under Brian Kelly, if he's diagnosing everything that needed fixing, almost assuredly a playoff team.
They're playoff caliber.
Okay.
And, we did all of these interviews, Dan, and the one thing that I think came out pretty boldly, it's hard to miss. Not just in the conversations we had with others, but even the conversation between ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The LSU Florida State game in week 1 is a monster game.
Can't wait.
It is a monster game. And it is 2 legit playoff contenders.
Sure.
I think it's 2 playoff contenders. And LSU could set the tone very early for what it looks like now in year 2 under Brian Kelly. But his ability to build a team the right way, I've talked about it till I'm blue in the face. I don't have to like the guy to prove it out. But he did that in slow motion at Notre Dame over 10 seasons, however long he was there. And I think he can do that a lot quicker at LSU, not just because of the portal, but because it's probably an easier place to recruit to.
Sure.
So he, I think, had really good results in year 1. And I think he will build on that success in year 2. And I think especially because there is uncertainty around the rest of the SEC and the SEC West, right? When was the last time we had both Georgia and Alabama in a high-profile quarterback search, high-profile quarterback contest? Both
True.
will probably be fine. But anytime you kind of have that uncertainty on the top rung of the depth chart, there's a bit of a vacuum and it needs to be filled. Who knows what to expect from Texas A&M this year? Who knows what to expect from Ole Miss or from Mississippi State or Florida? There's so many questions around the SEC. I think it's a very interesting conference, more interesting perhaps than ever before because of the status of some of these rosters. And then you got little old LSU.
little old LSU with their best defensive player in the country. Yeah.
They're in a really good spot. And so I think we could be having that conversation about Brian Kelly. It's not. And I understand the bar is high after last season.
I was going to say, is the word delta, right? The change. The delta more dramatic for what LSU could be if everything aligns, right? If they're more successful downfield on offense, if they play the run much better than they did at times last year. And then you talk about the Alabama and Georgia vacuum at quarterback at the moment, new offensive coordinator for Bama. Now they lose. They gave up, 40-ish, I think, to Texas A&M, 38 points or something like that. So they weren't a perfect team last year. There's room for growth. But you're talking about a team that was surprisingly very good most of the time last year to a full-on excellent LSU. If you are going to say, this is just me poking holes. If you're going to say the delta, the improvement under Brian Kelly is going to be more pronounced than, say, Mario Cristobal's or Billy Napier's or Lincoln Riley's. That's a tough one, though. Lincoln Riley's in that same boat. Or any of these guys, Joey McGuire, any of these guys that were 500-ish or not a bowl team and can surge, if close losses turn into close wins, into 8-9 win teams.
I think the jump from what felt like a almost Cinderella story last year to go from where LSU was in 2021
past couple years,
where they got to in 2022. Now they're not that far removed from a national championship, so I'm taking some liberties by calling it a Cinderella story, but you get my point. They got to a point of relative stability by the end of the season that none of us really saw coming, and I think that was a drastic improvement. The improvement now to jump up and be in that tier of teams on a more consistent basis is probably bigger than one might assume. I don't think they're that far off, but I think to get there consistently, I think Brian Kelly can do that. The other name that I'm going to throw out here, and maybe I'm just wish casting a little bit, but I really want to see Brent Venables do it at Oklahoma.
I think that's a good answer.
I really want to see Brent Venables do it. Go back and listen to our year one debrief with Eddie Radosevich of Sooner Scoop, where we talk through what went down at Oklahoma and in Norman. Brent Venables, year one, some of the trials and tribulations of becoming the guy as opposed to the assistant that everybody wants. He had some issues that he had to work out. And I think as the year progressed, he figured some of that stuff out kind of, in the middle of it all, but now having a full off season under his belt, the recruiting has been very strong. Mm-hmm. The talent is still on hand. He has some very real questions that he needs to answer, though. And chief among them is how he's going to fix his defense. He's a defensive-minded guy. That's kind of his pedigree.
Right.
So if anybody's going to fix it, it's going to be Brent Venables. And with the talent that they've got on hand on offense, I think they should be okay. I want that to be the answer. I want year two under Venables to be a huge success. And when we come back and we do year two debriefs, if that's even a thing that we do, I want to talk about Oklahoma. Going into the SEC alongside Texas, ramping this thing up, that will be a cool story. Not necessarily them going to the SEC, but just them ramping things up under kind of the native son, Brent Venables. I'm not sure of that. I'm not over and above confident that this is going to be a story that we have. In the same way that I'm not confident for Mario Cristobal, nor am I confident for Billy Napier. But I'm probably a little bit more confident in Brent Venables being the one that can turn it around.
See, I like Brent Venables over Mario Cristobal because Oklahoma's a place where just basically everybody wins. It's a place that is set up to win a bunch of games. Oklahoma's in a tougher spot because the Big 12 is just, it has such a high floor at the moment.
Yep.
And so the path to dramatic improvement is just trickier. But I do think Oklahoma, in terms of having Brent Venables, having a returning quarterback, recruiting like they did in this past class to like add in some youth into the rotation on defense, especially. Peyton Boeing, I think they had a big time edge rusher come in. I forget his name. So to me, I think Oklahoma is my answer over LSU but this is a question for you, not for me. I just think the lows were so low that even returning to an average bad day rather than a catastrophic bad day and not having to ride, was it Davis Bevel? Was he who played in the Red River shootout? Like, just avoiding those lows, I think, is going to bring Oklahoma to a much better winning place.
I also think, very quickly, and then we should get to the next question here. I also think there is an opportunity for Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. They won 3 games last season. The roster's still not in a great place, but I think he learned a lot. He's another guy who was in a very similar position to Venables, much lower profile, albeit very, very much lower profile than Venables. But at the same time, he was another guy who was a DC coming down, trying to figure this thing out, was familiar with the area before, and it just took him a while. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm hopeful on that front. Let's go next question. Give me that sound again. I love that sound.
Internal affairs.
Don LaFontaine? Is that the voice I'm thinking of? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Dan!
Yeah.
The echoes were awoken past week. The thunder shaken down from the sky. Another member of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish taking his talents to the southeast. Tyler Buchner.
Yeah.
My guy. The real TB12 going south. Former 4-star. He was Notre Dame's starting quarterback. He had a cup of coffee as a starting quarterback last season.
Got hurt. Yep.
I was all in on Buchner until I wasn't very suddenly. I've watched the kid. I like the kid. I do have to ask, though, with him now signing on to be one of the quarterbacks in the running for, I guess, the starter. I can't even believe I'm saying that, at Alabama. Mm-hmm. Does Alabama have a quarterback problem? A quarterback problem going into 2022.
Relative to a program that has had Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones and Bryce Young consecutively, yes, it is unusual for Alabama to be in this position because we talked about this a couple shows ago. It's unusual for Alabama to be in this position. We're like, there's not really an obvious guy at the moment, and nobody really looked to have much more command in the A-Day game, the spring game for Alabama. I don't know how much of that game you watched. I watched the first half of that game just to sort of see the poise and how they were using guys and see what the Tommy Rees offense would look like at Alabama. Looked a lot like the Tommy Rees offense at Notre Dame in that everything seemed difficult in the passing game, even completed passes. There weren't a lot of just guys running free that they were schemed open because there was an option route and safety took a bad angle or something like that. Now, we're talking about Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe throwing into the Alabama defense, which is difficult to do. But I still remember some Alabama spring games, some A-Day games where Bryce Young threw into that same defense and Tua threw into that same defense, and they were really good. Even with the talent on the other side of the ball. Yeah. As it relates to Tyler Buchner, I don't think there's a clear guy for Alabama at the moment. He's familiar with Tommy Rees's offense. It's always good to have quarterback depth. There's always the possibility that when Ty Simpson or Jalen Milroe find out that they're not the guy, that they leave Alabama. There's always that possibility. No matter what they say or don't say publicly, there's always that possibility. And to have Tyler Buchner, who probably isn't a very good Power 5 starting quarterback, especially at the top of the sport, might be one of the best backup quarterbacks in the country. And we all know sometimes you need a backup quarterback. Jalen Milroe, who did he start against last year when Bryce Young went down? Arkansas, I want to say. It's not easy to go and beat Arkansas on a moment's notice. So I'm okay with it. He knows the offense. He and the coordinator are familiar with it. In terms of the guys that are there right now in Milroe and Ty Simpson, neither one seemed to have great command. I thought Ty Simpson was a little bit late. There was not a hitch on his throw, but it was just like he delayed a little bit going downfield a little bit more than he should have. Receivers didn't really seem open, so they were squeezing in a lot, even when they were completing passes. I just thought they looked tentative and were going underneath and weren't sure of the timing of going downfield. And so I don't know if that's a Tommy Rees thing. I've long been a Rees skeptic. But I maybe I'm alone on that island. I just I can understand that if somebody is not really standing out at a place like Alabama with the line that should be in front of them, with the receiving and running. Justice Haynes looks really good as a running back next to them. If somebody's not standing out, bring in competition. It's an amazing luxury to have if you're a place like Alabama.
I mean, a couple thoughts here.
Yeah.
Bouncing around my head. When Buchner announced his intention to transfer, when he threw his name in the portal, I texted with 3 or 4 friends of mine about this, asking, where do you think he's going?
Northwestern, San Diego State, yeah.
And everybody had heard the Alabama rumor, and I don't know if anybody really bought it.
Right.
It didn't seem logical. This is the same team, Tommy Rees and Tyler Buchner, that brought you a 5-point home loss to Marshall last year. So the thought now that he's going to step in and be effective against SEC defenses, better competition, maybe a better supporting cast, but still, that to me is a stretch. And I'd love to be proven wrong because I was all in on Buchner when Notre Dame recruited him. But after seeing him play, you want to talk about hitches in your throws. I can show you Tyler Buchner's mechanics.
Right.
That to me, it's an incredible stretch. And so I think my broader point is, and I said this to some of the same friends that I texted with, if Tyler Buchner is going to be the guy for Alabama, bet the under on Alabama. Or bet the under on number of games started by Tyler Buchner, because I just don't see that being a tenable long-term solution throughout 2023 or beyond. It's just not going to happen. Now, I've been wrong many times before. But
sure.
Just don't see it. I don't see that happening. I know you've also been the Tommy Rees skeptic between us.
Yeah.
But I also have asked the question, most recently on the show that we did with Pete Sampson a couple weeks ago, but go back and listen to it. I asked the question, is Tommy Rees good? Is he a good offensive coordinator?
Yeah.
I think the consensus answer to that question has been, well, you think Nick Saban's going to hire a dud for his offensive coordinator? He's the best coach of all time.
No, and I'm sure there have been overtures from NFL teams and all that
look,
stuff. Yeah.
Saban has done enough at this juncture to earn the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But
hold on. I love you positioning this to be like, who am I to question Nick Saban?
But
on the other hand,
but
yeah,
he's not always right.
That's true.
He's still human. He's not infallible.
There were some Bill O'Brien offenses that I was not a fan of watching. Yeah.
So, this idea that Nick Saban's the best coach of all time is true. But something else that could be true is Tommy Rees has never been in this high profile type of situation before. And there were moments of his offense at Notre Dame that left a little to be desired. And also, the best quarterback that he developed in his time was Ian Book, who I don't think was that good. He was a good college quarterback.
Right.
But, he did a lot with one read, and if it's not there, then just run. So I just, I'm very skeptical about this, and I would look for Alabama to add another quarterback.
Fourth quarterback? Okay.
I think they should. I'd be very curious.
Well, they have Eli Holstein, so they've got 4. They had a blue,
I get it,
blue
but just
chip
add
in
a
there
fifth.
now. Yeah.
I don't know. Just add somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if any of the guys on the roster are the answer.
So this scenario means that it's not crazy to assume that at some point, Tommy Rees and Tyler Buchner, who have a relationship, who know each other, at some point had a phone call or a text message, exchange that included something like, bro, you can beat these guys out. Right?
Yeah.
I think so. There's no reason you can't win this job.
I think so. And that's what troubles me, Dan. It troubles me for Alabama.
As an Alabama viewer.
Yeah, I'm not rooting against Alabama. I'm not even rooting against Buchner or Rees or Saban or any of these guys.
Right.
But I don't know. Buchner had a shot.
Right.
He had a shot. And he wasn't going to beat out Sam Hartman, who's very good, frankly, who I was worried would go to Alabama with Tommy Rees and didn't.
Right.
He's not going to beat out Hartman. His spring game was kind of a mess.
Yeah.
We've been waiting, holding our breath for Tyler Buchner to become the Tyler Buchner that was a 4-star out of Southern California, originally from your part of the world now, and brought with him a ton of promise. We just have not seen that. And
How
he's
many
really fast.
Right.
He's really fast. He can run. And maybe they recruited him for that. He's got a wonky throwing motion. And I'm just not sure he's going to be the dude at Alabama. To me, that's a stretch.
How many schools have continually hit on at least having a good quarterback consecutively? That you have an unbroken chain of good quarterbacks.
Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been very good with it.
Oklahoma's been very good with it. Dylan Gabriel was okay. I'll give Dylan Gabriel the benefit of the doubt, but it was certainly a dip from where they were, a noticeable dip where Alabama really hasn't had that.
That may have been more scheme, than player,
an
but
injury,
sure.
yeah.
I'll give you that.
It's kind of at this moment, Ohio State,
No.
Clemson. I think that chain was broken these past couple years. Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
I don't know how, like USC had it for a while, kind of, but then you get into like the Cody Kessler, like it sort of faded. USC faded. Like how many schools have that unbroken chain of really good quarterbacks? Oregon lost it. They had a great chain going, but they lost it. I think pre-Herbert. And then
It's tough to keep it going. It's tough to keep it
Yeah.
going. Yeah. I mean, we could rack our brains for hours.
But
here.
yeah, so this is the unique situation you're talking about with Alabama. That Tommy Rees on the ground had some sort of exchange with Tyler Buchner that said, "You can win the job. You can. These guys are not crazy good." So that's fascinating.
All
To
right.
me. All right.
Next question.
Next question.
I vision.
All right.
I need the sound though. You need to put the sound.
Sorry.
In. Thank you.
Internal affairs.
Man, that gets blood flowing.
All
Continue.
right. It's easy for me. I'll speak for myself. To sort of bemoan the future of college football with realignment, right? That we're consolidating conferences.
Here we go.
Listen, hear me out. Hear me out.
All right, go ahead.
It's easy for me to complain because I do it a lot. That's what I do. So let me flip it. What do you see as the positives if the future of the sport is a huge Big Ten, a huge SEC, and they're picking off West Coast teams, ACC teams, in the next decade or whatever, in 10, 12 years, and we're pushing everybody else to the margins, and the Big 12 is in there, but not necessarily viewed as the same. Whatever we see as an obvious destination for college football.
Sure.
What are the positives? Because I want to play devil's advocate, or I want you to play devil's advocate for me, because I think you are naturally a little bit more optimistic. So what are the positives about where the sport is heading that we don't all see right now, maybe?
Well, you have to, I think, approach it short-term, long-term.
Yeah.
Through that lens. Short term for fans, you will see some new and interesting matchups.
Okay.
Short term for fans, it plays into a little bit why we love week one. It's not just a new season starting. You get some really interesting non-conference matchups, and it will feel that way for a while.
Yeah. New travel, new faces, everything. Yeah.
You will get weird USC versus Purdue matchups that
Can't wait. The Neil Armstrong Bowl? Yeah.
the Neil Armstrong. Can't wait. Play the Bart Scott sound. But you will get weird combinations like that make it feel like something new and novel, and it may not be a close game on the field, but the matchup is at least interesting. So I think that's a short-term benefit. I also think stylistically, and maybe I'm just focused mainly on the USC, UCLA, Big Ten thing. But stylistically, there aren't a whole lot of teams that play like USC in the Big Ten right now. Maybe Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
But how that evolves in the short and medium and long term, I think will be very interesting. Do more teams evolve to play the USC brand of football? Does USC eventually evolve into more of a smash mouth Wisconsin style football? I don't know. I have my assumptions, but I think styles make fights, as we've said time and again on this show. And stylistically, there's a contrast there between some of the newcomers and the old guard that I think in the short term makes it for interesting viewing. Bigger picture, I think a couple things.
Okay.
Bigger picture, I hope, because the money is so like just overwhelming now.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that some of that money is poured into other programs at these schools. I hope the benefits of $100 million a year or whatever USC isn't burning off with travel
and fuel. Yeah.
There'll be a lot that comes out in airline fuel, but I hope that other programs that typically don't get the benefit, that some of that money can be reinvested in some of these athletic programs. I don't know what that looks like. I've never been in the front office of a college football or college athletic program, but I hope that some of that money can go to others. I also hope that, and I suspect this will get us closer to a model where you talked earlier about the current system being very secretly anti-player.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this money,
not anti-player as it was before, just a new kind of anti-player.
Anti-player with better marketing.
Sure.
I hope that this influx of money really rips the veil off of what the sport is. And with all the TV money coming in and with the executives essentially running college football,
mm-hmm.
I think in due time it will become very, very hard to deny the fact that these are employees of colleges.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Please.
Did you ever date somebody and find yourself after a certain amount of time, 2 months, 3 months, 8 months, whatever, being blindsided by the question of, so what are we? Because I don't think this sport, whatever this sport actually means, can keep ducking that question as money increases, as visibility increases, as consolidation for money and TV reasons and exposure reasons and West Coast window reasons, whatever. I don't think the people running conferences, the people that want the best for the sport, I don't think the question of, so what are we, when you kind of already know but are not taking the steps either away from something or towards something, I don't think that can be avoided when we get to what appears to be, again, super conferences and the Fox conference and the Disney conference. That's what I'm saying is employees, here's what the portal is, here's what NIL is, or here's what NIL isn't, and here's what the portal isn't, and here's what collectives are, and here's what collectives aren't, and this is what we're on the hook for, and this is what we're not on the hook for. That, I think, is the big positive thing, that this is going to force the hand of you, of me, the goobers who avoid such questions so unsuccessfully, I might interject personally.
Very, very badly. Yeah.
So what are we?
Yeah, I mean, look, that is, I think, the longer term gain out of this.
Right.
It becomes very difficult to avoid that question.
Yeah.
Because there's so much money in it. And because money and TV rights and the like are clearly the governing body of the sport, the only governing body of the sport, let's be real. There's a reason the NCAA hired Charlie Baker, a former governor, still a politician, to run things, because they know that this is getting awfully big in the window and it's becoming unavoidable. The questions, anytime you've got this much money on the line, tend to get louder, not softer. And eventually we will get to a place where somebody successfully goes before a court and is able to prove out that players should be getting some cut of this thing.
Yeah.
Some cut of this thing. I have long said, and this is maybe the only thing I've ever been consistent on in this show, but going back to the very beginning, I've long said, the biggest problem with college football is the college part.
Sure.
The fact that they try to mix what is certainly now, maybe not to this extent 20 years ago, but certainly now, a money sport with this veil of student athletes.
Right.
And we want our guys to graduate, and this is something that we also care about. It's hard to live in both those worlds, especially now with the transfer portal and NIL, and especially with these TV contracts that we're talking about. You just can't have it both ways. And so, if anything, I think this new era that we're in, that everybody's kind of bummed out about vaguely, eventually it's going to force the issue. And we may get 25 years into this thing and find that college football looks drastically different.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think the output of that will be bad. I think it's just going to force an inevitability upon us that we've all known for a good long time and just haven't seen become official.
Look, every sport is insane. Every sport, if you drill down deep enough, you're like, So what are bird rights, right? Why can't this MVP third baseman make more than $800,000? What's going on exactly? And then every sport's insane in its own way. But because we talk about this sport and we have to say, yeah, just won a Heisman. Awesome. Does he make a lot of money?
Right.
Actually, it makes an okay live. Yeah. He makes a couple mil, makes $1.5 million. Like, man, that's a lot. School's on the hook for a couple $1 million for actually a dairy-free ice cream magnet is the one footing the bill. Actually, this guy who has a chain of rest stops is paying the linebacker who just won the Butkus.
Right. USC's getting $100 million a year.
Yeah.
Surely they're sharing some of that money with the...
Right.
Maybe not.
Well, no,
maybe not.
They do via Kobe beef burgers. Yeah. Have you? I'm sure you've seen all the memes of like the companies who are like, we made record profits. How are we sharing it? Like pizza parties. Like, what about money?
Yeah.
What about currency? Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating, and it will be a longer term study.
Yeah.
I love the question. I hate the question.
Yeah, of course.
It's just where we're at in college football. We've got 2 wild card questions here, Dan. Let me ask mine first. Give me that. I need the sound, though.
Of course.
Internal affairs.
Internal affairs.
It actually, the phrase internal affairs makes no sense with what we're actually doing. Because
absolutely nothing.
It means that we'd be investigating each other for improprieties behind the scenes, but continue.
Well, yeah. Okay,
no,
that's makes sense. Wild card. This one kind of is in the vein of the choose your own adventure shows that we've done in the past.
Okay.
Which I still think we need to do probably this month because it's May. Nothing happens in May.
Yeah.
Outside of Peyton Thorne and Keon Coleman. But here is your wild card question, Dan. I wrote this. I scripted this out. I never do this. In a stunning career move, you have been elected Chief Uniform Officer of college football. It's
okay.
New role. You're the CUO. A
Okay.
little clunky, but very important. Your first order of business is you're conducting a full audit of every Power 5 team's uniforms. I wrote down kits on my script for the soccer folks, for the folks abroad.
Of course.
In your review, you've come to a startling conclusion. There are 3 teams, 1, 2, 3, that are brandishing the wrong colors. In your expert opinion, which schools should change their colors to something else to better convey the spirit of the institution, the vibe of the team, and the traditions of the program?
Yeah.
Which teams are wearing the wrong colors, Dan?
Okay. So this is a personal belief, and maybe it's because of my own baggage. I went to a high school that has since changed its colors because I think the uniforms were too expensive with a certain shade. This is totally true.
Is that a real story?
Totally true. I don't think anybody ever should be wearing the color brown. Okay? I think it looks bad on everybody. I think it's impossible to match. Yes, the Calabasas Coyotes went from brown and gold to black and gold.
So you're anti-Wyoming is what you're telling me.
So
right
Wyoming, Bowling Green has like a weird brown. I assume brown has its own shade of brown. I think any school that is trying to attempt brown, Western Michigan, I believe, Ty, you can confirm or
the
deny.
Broncos. Yep.
So I think I would start there. I would also say, especially schools that have rivals who wear different colors, rivals who wear similarly shaded colors, that somebody has to make a change. Because watching UCLA, USC is too beautiful, having the cardinal gold and the baby blue and gold, or whatever the shade of UCLA is, especially when they're both wearing their home kits, Ty, at the same time. Beautiful. So the rivals who have uniform combinations or color combinations that are too close to each other. So like on a certain level, I'm thinking about Pitt and West Virginia, both wearing shades of blue, yellow, gold. So to me, who has the cooler uniform? Obviously,
that could be interesting stakes for the backyard brawl.
I think it's definitely interesting stakes.
Change your uniform if you lose.
Yes. And I think West Virginia has had some incredible uniforms over the years, but I give the nod to Pitt there. That Pitt's current iteration, those shades of blue and gold, that script Pitt, as much as I like the West Virginia uniforms, the West Virginia logo, I think West Virginia needs to make a change. I don't have a color suggestion. Because Cal and UCLA, not rivals, but they're both in the UC system, and I think the UCLA look is more iconic. I think Cal, especially with how down they've been, I think they should rebrand color-wise. Now, I like that their blue and yellow, blue and gold is different from Stanford's cardinal and white. I like that. But I still think because they're in the same conference, the rest of the Pac-12, I'm great with. I love, even though it can look a little bit old-fashioned and tired, I love Arizona State's maroon. I don't know. They've had success. I like the look. I think it pops. I'm great with it. Otherwise, I think I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good as long as, are there any other rivalries that come to mind where the colors are too close that you have to make a judgment call on who gets to keep that combo?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
I know.
You're horribly colorblind.
Right.
Yeah. You're my color wheel, really. I mean, you tell me what colors things
For
are.
a long time, I thought Baylor had pretty terrible uniforms, but they've gotten better over these past few years. And I'm a green and yellow, obviously green and gold with Baylor believer. But otherwise, no, I don't think I have specific teams where I'm like, they need to do a lot better. Maybe Indiana, because they're so much better red within the Big Ten with Wisconsin and Ohio State. They're like, maybe this is time for Indiana. But because they have the iconic basketball look with red, I guess they can keep it. So good for you guys, Hoosiers. Otherwise, no, I part of the reason I love college is there are so many teams and there's so many wild uniforms and uniform traditions that it's the what's it called? What's the quilt called? That's the enormous quilt. What am I looking for, Ty, here?
I have no idea.
Help me out here.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's what I love. That's what I love, that everybody's so different color-wise within the sport. So, no, I'm trying to think. You know,
Kansas State to me is kind of a weird.
K-State?
Yeah. I don't mind the uniform. I don't mind the uniform. I just, when I think of Kansas State, purple and silver is not where my mind goes first.
Well, they're not terribly close to. I mean, I guess purple and blue, somewhat with Kansas, is somewhat close. So it'd be nice to have that a differentiating factor there. We just don't have enough purple schools. I like purple as a color with uniform. We've got UW in Washington, but
TCU, yeah,
TCU, yeah, that's true. Maybe TCU has. Well, no, Kansas State has the time in the conference that should trump TCU's allegiance to purple, but. No, otherwise, to me, it's just that rivalry thing. It's just that, like, look, Florida's got, blue and orange, and Georgia's got red and black. And like, I like that differentiating factor. So, no, I wouldn't change too many schools.
All right, we've got one final question. Give me the sound. Let's make this one. This is your wild card to me.
Internal affairs.
Internal affairs. This isn't so much a football one.
Not at all. Zero football. This is just a wild card question to end the show. Ty, I think about this question a lot. I don't know if you do. You're granted a wish from a convenience genie. And we're done talking college football. So if you only came to the show for college football, just thank you for listening, subscribe, and rate, whatever. The genie lets you choose from either of these two conveniences for your life. Okay? Happens in the middle of the night, so you don't have to deal with it at all. It's happening while you're sleeping. Pixies show up to help you with one of these two conveniences. They're just floating through the air, taking care of things. 1, these pixies fully clean and organize your house, your yard, to your exact specifications, right? That, like, they're throwing out the food you want thrown out, they're vacuuming this, they're dusting that, they're, stacking this, they're cleaning these gutters this way, they're mowing your lawn that way. Really just every morning you wake up, it's the best possible version of your house, apartment, condo, off the grid shack, whatever you call home, you get that service. Or B, it's the administrative version of that. So they're taking care of all of your boring emails. They're taking care of paying all of your bills. They're taking care of your mom. Her wallpaper on her iPhone keeps changing, and you need to, like, all right, I'll come over.
I just had an issue with this.
Really?
I just had an issue with that. Yeah.
All of the boring stuff that has nothing to do with how you live, but how you interact with the outside world. All of, like, you just got to update your car registration. You got to go grocery shopping. You got to pick up dry cleaning. All of the, like, daily stuff that, like, you'd rather not do, but you have to do. Which side of that do you want the pixies taking care of in the middle of the night?
I take A in a heartbeat.
A, okay.
Yeah. Or cleaning and organizing the house. Yeah. And it's not even really a question for me. Yeah. It's not even really a question. I don't mind the administrative stuff.
Oh, I hate it
much.
so much.
I don't like it, but I don't mind it as much. Because the thing about the house, and I mean, you probably know this better, having two little ones, two little monsters running around the house. I'm sure it's more difficult for you than it is for me. But the amount of stress that adds to my life is definitely greater than the bill that I can just set up for auto pay on my credit card, or the weird emails, or the car renewal type thing.
Oh, I hate all that stuff.
I don't like it.
No, I know.
But I think just every night going to bed knowing that I could wake up and all of the house chores are done, I would probably pick that ferry.
See, the problem with me is I feel more compelled to do the house stuff because I see it. I can just throw on AirPods and do the dishes. I can throw on the AirPods and vacuum up. I can throw on the AirPods and pick up my kids' toys, and it's just a thing. And it never takes as long as you think it's going to take. Now you start getting into yard stuff and cleaning out gutters and raking leaves and all. It takes time. It does take time. I grant you that. But because I don't see, oh, we got to pay this. Oh, we got to pick this up. Oh, that is so much easier for me to procrastinate and put off, and gets me in so much more trouble in life, that it'd be so much nicer to just write out a list for those pixies to do in the middle of the night. I'm like, take care of all this. I don't want to think about it. That to me is more attractive. That to me is, and that's just my specific procrastinating personality. I'm just like, I don't want to deal with any of this stuff. You do it. Whereas house stuff, I don't know. I don't mind as much. And so to me, if we lived in an AirPod free society, not a sponsor could be, shout out Apple. It'd be different, but I don't know. I can zone out while doing a lot of that stuff.
Alrighty.
Keeps me on my feet.
Yeah. Let us know on social media. Let us know on email, solidverbal@gmail.com, what your thoughts are on this question, on any of the 8 questions that we posed here.
The word I was looking for was tapestry. That was given to us in the comments by a Patreon subscriber, Chris. Tapestry.
Yeah, you can watch these episodes live if you are a premium Verballer. Just go out to verballers.com for more info on what our perks are.
Yeah.
That does it for today's show. We'll be back on Thursday with a public Q&A.
Listener Q&A. Priority given to people who subscribe on
Patreon, verballers.com, VERBALLERS.com.
Would love that.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan, play that sound one more time, please. Just one more. I love that sound.
Internal affairs.
We need to add that one to the board permanently.
Permanent?
That's a good one. Permanent, yeah.
Maybe I'll shorten it to just internal affairs.
For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thank you so much for downloading, listening, playing along at home, and supporting the show. We'll talk to you all in a few days. Stay solid.
Peace.